India and oil, let's get into it first. Why it's important water here. So obviously, post-Operation Epic Fury in the Middle East, a lot of energy imports have been unable to get out of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Arabian Peninsula in general. So this is oil coming from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Kuwait, and some others, but those are the main players. Now, interestingly, why does India play into this? Well, obviously, their proximity is close, and a number of their own barrels that they imported from the region were coming from the Strait of Hormuz, or coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. And the majority of Indian energy imports via oil, the oil segment, there's a lot of different segments, nuclear, coal, LNG, etc., come from Russia. They're the vast majority of the supplier of India, but interestingly, coming out of the signing of India's trade deal, the bilateral trade deal they signed with the U.S. They also signed one with the EU at the same time, around the same time, but these are two separate bilateral trade deals. One of the little talked about details that we can't even tell if it's true or not yet, but the data doesn't lie. And before this agreement, the Indians were essentially telling us to go kick rocks. They're just like, hey, we have this demand. We are going to need it. We're not going to go into energy poverty just because the U.S. wants us to. But something happened after this agreement, which they actually materially started to draw down their imports of Russian crude. So something happened. Why does this all matter? So obviously this has big implications for Russia's ability to continue to maintain and prosecute its war in Ukraine. Obviously 4+ years in the making now. One of the largest ways they continue to do that is via cash they get from exporting their oil, of which India is one of the largest buyers. Now, India is the second largest country in the world. They obviously have an intense and incredible energy demand. And that need is going to be met somehow. So if you're not buying Russian oil, where you're going to get it from? You're going to get it from the Strait of Hormuz. Well, if the Strait of Hormuz is also closed and you also agree to not buy Russian oil, well, what are you going to do? U.S., this has gone a little talked about, but we issued a 30-day waiver. It's probably going to be extended because the strait's probably going to be closed for longer than 30 days, which has a whole other mess of second and third order effects. We issued 30-day waiver that India could continue to buy Russian oil. But what this signals is not just the buying and selling, although this is also very interesting about it, global energy markets. A lot of people don't know enough about them. But what it signals is that India and the U.S. are actually working closer in tandem than what most people think. This indicates to us is that India of the past has been historically very much aligned with Russia. There's a lot of reasons for this. Non-aligned movement, Cold War, et cetera, et cetera. India has been also one of the largest buyers of Russian arms. That has subsequently switched. They started buying more arms from the U.S. Now they're buying a lot of energy from the U.S. Now they're also complying and agreeing with where they actually get their energy globally to help facilitate U.S. national interests around the globe. So this tells us is that in the future, the long run of the future, India sees the U.S. as more of a strategic player than they have Russia in the past. Super interesting stuff. Obviously, we live in a watershed moment of changing alliances and friendships and adversarial relationships. And it's really good to see the world's second largest democracy, India, pivot and favor the West and the U.S. Like and subscribe for more.